Yes, you read that correctly. The Kardashian empire is starting to crack right down the middle, and what is bubbling underneath that crack is about to make every late-night talk show host choke on their coffee. Before we even get into how the courthouse might be the next stop for Kim Kardashian and Kanye West, before we even get into the trademark games, before we touch the Diddy bombshell, the Coachella outrage, the trademark wars, or the leaked text messages, there is something even nastier brewing right behind that polished Calabasas curtain that nobody is ready for. So before we go 1 inch deeper, drop a like on this video, hit that subscribe button, and ring the bell because the Kim defenders are going to come crawling out of every corner of the internet the second I open my mouth. And the Kanye loyalists are going to be even louder. And I am not in the mood to babysit comment sections full of people who refuse to read past a headline. Smash that like so the algorithm pushes this past the noise. And let me say what I am about to say without the usual circus following me into the replies. And listen, before anybody starts pointing fingers and screaming that I am taking sides, let me make this crystal clear from the very first breath. I am not the one writing the cease and desist. I am not the one filing the trademarks. I am not the one putting an 11-year-old on a track with a federally indicted man. I am simply the messenger, and the receipts are already on the table. So let us crack open the folder, lay every page out under the light, and walk through this story the way it actually happened, not the way the publicists want you to believe it happened. Roll the tape. It started, as most modern celebrity disasters tend to start, with a single song nobody asked for. In March of 2025, Kanye West, in his typical late-night, no-warning, no-filter fashion, walked onto X and announced a track titled Lonely Road Still Will Go to Sunshine. He did not whisper it. He did not tease it through a record label rollout. He did not pre-clear it through the proper channels the way a normal artist with a normal divorce decree would. He just dropped the announcement like a grenade and walked away, and the credits attached to that song are where the entire foundation of this story begins to tremble. According to Kanye, the track featured Sean Combs, the man the world used to know as Diddy. It featured Christian King Combs, his son. It featured Jasmine Williams, a Chicago vocalist signed to Yeezy. And then, buried in that list of credits like a landmine wrapped in tissue paper, were 2 more names: Kim Kardashian and North West, their daughter, 11 years old at the time. And this is where the very first domino tips forward and clips the next one in line, because the name Diddy is not just a name anymore. It is a federal indictment. It is a racketeering conspiracy charge. It is a sex trafficking case. It is a transportation to engage in prostitution charge. It is a stack of civil lawsuits from plaintiffs accusing him of horrors that no court has had to filter through in years. So picture this for a single second. You are a parent. You have an 11-year-old daughter. And the father of that daughter is publicly tying her vocal cords to a track that shares billing with a man whose name lives on the federal docket. That is not a creative dispute. That is not an artistic disagreement. That is a parenting earthquake, and Kim Kardashian felt every single tremor of it before the world even heard the first beat drop. Now you have to understand the legal architecture that all of this drama is sitting on top of, because without that foundation, the rest of the story does not hit the way it is supposed to hit. When Kim and Kanye finalized their divorce in November of 2022, they did not walk away as 2 strangers with 2 separate calendars. They walked away as legal partners stitched together by a custody agreement that gave them equal weight on every major decision involving their 4 children. North, Saint, Chicago, Psalm, joint legal custody, joint physical custody, a $200,000 a month child support arrangement on top of it. And most importantly, a clause that requires both parents to consult each other before greenlighting anything that affects the children's health, their education, their welfare, their schooling, their therapy, their religious participation, their public exposure. In other words, neither of them gets to wake up one morning and unilaterally make a call. Neither of them gets to play solo. Neither of them gets to bypass the other and act like the agreement does not exist. Joint legal custody is not a courtesy. It is a contract. And contracts, as Kanye West is about to find out the very hard way, do not bend just because you yell loud enough on social media. Contracts do not bend just because you have a verified blue check. Contracts do not bend just because you happen to be one of the most famous men on the planet. Contracts bend when judges decide to bend them. And judges do not bend them in the favor of the loudest person in the room. They bend them in the favor of the parent who can prove they followed the rules. So when Kanye announced the song with North's voice on it, Kim did what any co-parent with a functioning legal team would do. She moved into mediation. According to TMZ's reporting, the 2 of them sat down on a Friday, hashed it out behind closed doors, and walked away with what looked like a clean agreement. North would not appear on any version of the track. Not the explicit, not the clean, not the deluxe, not the bonus. Nothing. Done. Handshake. End of conversation. And then the weekend came. And Kanye West, in a move that should have surprised absolutely no one who has watched him operate for the last decade, released the song anyway, with North's voice on it, untouched, unedited, unapologetic. And just in case anybody mistook it for an accident, he doubled down on X with a post that said the man makes the final decision. That was the line. That was the flag in the ground. That was the moment a private custody dispute became a public detonation. And the shockwave from that detonation is still rippling through every legal filing we are about to walk through. Read that sentence one more time. The man makes the final decision. That is not a man fumbling through a misunderstanding. That is a man writing his own legal liability in real time, in public, on a platform owned by a billionaire who screenshots everything, in front of an audience of millions of witnesses who will absolutely be subpoenaed if this thing ever lands in a courtroom. But Kanye did not stop there, because Kanye never stops there. He went back to X and started posting screenshots of what he claimed were private text exchanges between him and Kim. And the contents of those screenshots are the kind of thing that a divorce attorney prints out, frames, and hangs above their desk as a warning to future clients. In the alleged texts, Kim wrote that she had asked Kanye for permission to trademark North's name. She wrote that Kanye had said yes. She wrote that the trademark would revert to North on her 18th birthday. She wrote that she had sent the paperwork specifically so that North would not appear on the Diddy track, that the entire trademark filing was, in part, a protective shield. And what was Kanye's response inside those screenshots? It was not a calm rebuttal. It was not a measured request for renegotiation. It was an ultimatum. Amend it, he wrote, or I am going to war and neither of US will recover from the public fallout. And then, in case the threat was not loud enough already, he added a sentence that should make every family court judge in California sit up straight in their chair. You're going to have to kill me. Read that line again. Slowly. Let it sit on your tongue. That is not a man arguing about a song credit. That is a man who has decided that the gloves are not just off. The gloves were never invited to the fight in the first place. And every word of that text exchange, every screenshot, every threat, every receipt, is now sitting in a folder somewhere on a lawyer's desk, waiting to be Exhibit A whenever this thing finally walks into a courtroom. Texts like that do not get unsent. Texts like that do not get walked back. Texts like that do not disappear because somebody deletes a tweet. Texts like that get archived, indexed, screenshotted, notarized, and weaponized. And the only person who comes out clean from a paper trail like that is the person who did not send it. And it is walking. Make no mistake about that. Because the moment Kanye released that song after agreeing in mediation not to, he did not just break a verbal handshake. He potentially violated the spirit and the letter of a court-ordered custody arrangement. And that violation pushed Kim Kardashian directly into a decision that could rewrite the entire structure of the way these 4 children grow up. Sources close to her have confirmed that she is now seriously weighing whether to walk into a Los Angeles courtroom and ask a judge to strip Kanye West of joint legal custody entirely. Not partial, not modified, stripped, removed, erased from the decision-making column on every form their kids will ever fill out. And to understand the weight of that move, you have to understand what it actually means. It does not mean Kanye loses access to his children. He already barely uses the access he has. Sources point out that he rarely sees them in person, that physical custody has not been the battleground for years, that Kim has consistently facilitated a relationship between the kids and their father even when she did not have to. The one time she pushed back, the one documented exception, was when Kanye held an event where attendees were urged to wear shirts emblazoned with swastikas, and even the most generous interpretation of co-parenting cannot place children in that room. So this is not about visitation. This is about decision-making power. This is about whether Kanye West gets to keep one hand on the steering wheel of his children's lives, or whether the court takes that hand off the wheel for good. And once a court takes that hand off the wheel, it is almost impossible to put it back. Legal custody, once stripped, does not grow back the way physical custody can. It is a one-way door, and every parent who has ever walked through it has had to do so on the basis of overwhelming, undeniable, court-tested evidence that they could not be trusted with the responsibility. Kanye, by all accounts, has handed the opposing side most of that evidence himself, voluntarily, on a public platform, with timestamps. Now here is where the story folds in on itself in the most twisted way possible. Because while Kim was quietly building the legal scaffolding to potentially remove Kanye from the legal custody equation, Kanye, simultaneously, in the exact same window of time, was building his own legal weapon aimed straight at her. In May of 2025, Kanye West stopped airing his grievances on social media long enough to do something that actually carries legal weight. He had his attorney draft and serve a cease and desist letter on Kim Kardashian. And this was not a vague little warning shot. According to TMZ, this was a multi-page document a litany of accusations stacked on top of each other, every single one of them claiming that Kim had been violating the terms of their custody arrangement and ignoring his rights as a co-parent to all 4 of their children. And the letter zeroed in on 3 specific battlegrounds, each one more pointed than the last. The first one was the Met Gala. Kanye claimed that Kim had brought North to the Met Gala in New York City, and that during portions of the event, she had allegedly left their 11-year-old daughter unattended in a vehicle. He framed it as a temporary absence of supervision that placed North in a vulnerable position, exposed to media scrutiny, surrounded by adults who were not equipped to protect her, in a city that does not slow down for anybody, let alone a preteen with the most photographed last name on the planet. Whether you believe his version of events or not, the legal implication is clear. He is building a paper trail. He is putting it in writing. He is making sure that if this ever ends up in front of a judge, there is a documented complaint about North's safety at one of the most chaotic public events on the social calendar. And paper trails matter in family court. They matter more than anybody who has not sat in a custody hearing can possibly imagine. Because the parent who walks in with documentation almost always walks out with leverage, and Kanye, despite every chaotic decision he has made in public, is not stupid about leverage. The second pillar of the cease and desist was TikTok. And this one cuts deep, because TikTok is the vein that Kim Kardashian's entire empire taps into on a daily basis. Kanye accused Kim of repeatedly posting North on TikTok despite his clearly stated objections. He framed it as a deliberate dismissal of his co-parenting authority, as a calculated decision to override his voice on matters that the divorce decree explicitly says require both signatures. He argued that the children should not be visible on platforms with hundreds of millions of users. Platforms where strangers can comment, screenshot, repost, remix, and weaponize a child's face in ways no parent can ever fully claw back. And whether you agree with him, or you think he is being theatrical about it, the man is not entirely wrong about the architecture of social media. Once a child's image enters the algorithm, it does not belong to the parent anymore. It belongs to the internet. Forever. The image gets scraped, mirrored, reposted, screenshotted, archived on servers in jurisdictions no American court has the power to touch. And once that happens, no judge, no settlement, no apology, no takedown notice can pull it back. That is the reality every modern parent is wrestling with. That is the reality Kanye is gesturing at, even when he gestures clumsily. And the third pillar of the cease and desist was the broadest of all. Kanye accused Kim of exploiting North for personal gain and commercial gain, of monetizing their daughter's image at public events, of treating her not as a child, but as a brand asset, of disregarding his joint custodial rights every single time she pushed North toward the spotlight. That is the heaviest accusation in the entire letter, because exploitation is a word that carries weight in family court. It is not just a tabloid insult. It is a legal trigger. And once that word lands on a judge's desk, the conversation changes shape entirely. But sources connected to Kim painted a very different picture of the same exact set of events. According to insiders who spoke to TMZ, Kanye has barely even asked to see the kids that year. He has not been showing up. He has not been calling. He has not been engaging in the day-to-day reality of being a father in any meaningful way. And when he has asked, Kim has not blocked him. She has not denied access. She has not played gatekeeper. The picture they paint is not of a mother weaponizing custody against an absent father, but of a father who only remembers he has children when there is a song to sell, a public statement to make, or a legal letter to file. And whether the truth lands closer to Kanye's version or Kim's version, the legal analysts looking at this from the outside have all said the same thing. A cease and desist is not a lawsuit. It is a warning shot. It is the loud knock on the door before the battering ram. And if Kim does not respond the way Kanye wants her to respond, this thing is going to escalate into a full courtroom war, and that war is going to be public, and that war is going to be ugly, and that war is going to drag every single one of these children through the discovery process, whether their parents like it or not. Discovery, for those who have never sat near a divorce attorney, is the part of a lawsuit where every email, every text, every voicemail, every iCloud backup, every Notes app entry, every encrypted message, every doctor's note, every school record, every therapy session log, every nanny agreement, every staff schedule, every security camera feed, every receipt, and every transaction the family has ever generated becomes potentially admissible. That is what these two are flirting with. That is what is sitting on the other side of one filed petition. And neither of them, given everything we have already seen leak from their household in the last decade, can possibly want that Pandora's box opened on a public docket. There was also a strange wrinkle tucked into the cease and desist that almost nobody picked up on at the time, and it deserves a moment of its own. Kanye's attorney noted in the document that she was also representing his wife, Bianca Censori. And nobody knows exactly what legal stake Bianca has in a custody battle over 4 children who are not biologically hers. Maybe it is a procedural footnote. Maybe it is a strategic positioning. Maybe it is something deeper that has not been disclosed yet. But the moment her name appears on a document that is supposed to be about Kim and Kanye and their kids, you have to ask yourself what game is actually being played here, and how many seats at this table the public has not been told about. Because in family law, every name on a document matters. Every signature carries weight. Every party listed on a filing becomes a potential witness, a potential deposition target, a potential exhibit. And whoever made the decision to put Bianca's name on that letter made it for a reason. And that reason has not been explained to the public yet. And then, just to make sure nobody mistook the cease and desist for the end of the road, Kanye took to X on April 23rd and announced that he was speaking to 4 lawyers a day until he found a suitable counsel who would make sure his rights to his children were realized. 4 lawyers a day. That is not a man looking for legal advice. That is a man building an army. So you have a two-front war now. On one side of the battlefield, Kim Kardashian is quietly preparing a potential petition to strip Kanye of joint legal custody. On the other side, Kanye is publicly assembling a legal team to drag Kim into court for what he calls exploitation, neglect, and a pattern of unilateral parenting. And standing in the no man's land between those two armies, frozen in the middle of every headline and every screenshot and every cease and desist, is Northwest. 12 years old. Already one of the most photographed faces in the world. Already one of the most monetized names in the entire celebrity ecosystem. And the irony, the cruel, beautiful irony at the center of all of this, is that while her parents are using the legal system to fight over who gets to control her childhood, Kim has been quietly turning that childhood into a corporation. Because while the public has been watching the screaming matches and the leaked texts, something far more strategic has been happening in the back rooms of California's business filings. And that strategy has a name. It has a logo. It has a trademark portfolio. And it is being built brick by brick around an 11-year-old girl. Kim Kardashian filed her first trademark on North's name back in 2023, covering toys, dolls, play sets, puzzles, party games, even puppets. The filing went through the United States Patent and Trademark Office under a corporate entity called Kimmy's Kid Incorporated, a company that was incorporated in California in 2023 with the stated goal of launching a skincare line and a toy line. And while the name of the company nods at both parents, the state records tell a very different story. Kardashian is the only one listed as actively involved. Kanye's name is on the marquee. Kim's name is on every single document that actually matters. Then in January of 2026, the operation scaled up. On January 14th, Kim's lawyers filed 3 new trademark applications on behalf of her daughter for an entirely new brand. The brand is reportedly called Nori 11, a fusion of North's nickname and the age she was when she allegedly began working on the venture. And the categories covered by those applications are not modest. Clothing, footwear, loungewear, hats, watches, jewelry, handbags, cosmetics cases. This is not a vanity project. This is the legal blueprint for a full lifestyle and fashion label. The kind of brand architecture that takes most adult celebrities a decade to assemble. And it is being built around a child who has not even finished middle school yet. To put that into context, by the time most 12-year-olds are picking out their first locker decorations, this 12-year-old has a corporate registry, a trademark portfolio, a logo design package, a soft launch social media campaign, and a roster of attorneys filing paperwork in her name across multiple product verticals. That is not normal. That is not common. That is not even unusual by celebrity standards. That is unprecedented, full stop. And whether you read it as savvy parenting or strategic exploitation depends entirely on which side of the cease and desist you happen to be standing on. And now you can see exactly why those leaked text messages between Kim and Kanye carry the weight that they do. When Kim wrote that she had Kanye's permission to trademark North's name, she was not just protecting a word. She was protecting an entire commercial empire, an entire portfolio, an entire revenue stream that, depending on how you look at it, could end up worth tens of millions of dollars before North turns 18. And when Kanye threatened to go to war over it, he was not just threatening a custody battle. He was threatening to detonate a financial structure that has been carefully assembled in silence over the course of 2 years. That is why his text said neither of us will recover from the public fallout. That is why he said you're going to have to kill me. Because the trademark is not just a name on a piece of paper. The trademark is the keystone holding up an empire that is already in motion. Pull that keystone out, and the entire arch collapses. Renegotiate that keystone in court, and every other brick in the structure becomes negotiable. That is the leverage Kanye is reaching for. That is the pressure point he is pressing. That is why every word out of his mouth on this subject sounds less like a parent and more like a man who has just realized he is sitting on the most valuable bargaining chip in his entire life. And North is not just a passive participant in any of this. She is, by every public indication, an active builder of her own footprint. In December of 2025, North joined Instagram under her own account, and within weeks she was posting teasers, dropping cryptic captions, and seeding grassroots awareness for the Nori 11 brand before the formal announcement ever hit the press. She was photographed with friends wearing black hats stamped with the Nori 11 logo, the kind of soft launch that fashion executives spend years studying at brand marketing conferences. She has rapped on songs. She has released her own album. She has walked the Met Gala carpet. She has attended Coachella, where rapper Young Thug, of all people, publicly questioned the wisdom of letting a 12-year-old roam the most chemically saturated music festival on the calendar. She has done collaborations with her award-winning father. She has been featured in trademark filings, business filings, brand filings, and corporate filings. She is, by every functional metric the entertainment industry uses to measure a celebrity, already a celebrity. And the question buried underneath all of this, the question her parents are now dragging into court, is whether any 12-year-old should be carrying that much architecture on her shoulders in the first place. Because there is a difference between a child who has a famous last name and a child who is operating as the central asset of a multi-vertical commercial enterprise. There is a difference between letting a kid post a TikTok and registering trademarks in her name across 9 product categories. And the line between those two things is exactly the line that a Los Angeles judge may end up being asked to draw, in ink, in a court order, while the entire world watches. Even Kim, in her more honest moments, has admitted that the pressure of managing this is more than she bargained for. On an episode of The Kardashians, she sat in front of the cameras and confessed that she thought she was busy before, that becoming North's momager was crazy, that it had not been on her list, that it was not on her bingo card for the year. That is a remarkable admission. That is a woman publicly acknowledging that she is steering a commercial enterprise built around a child, that the workload of doing so has surprised even her, and that she is doing it anyway. And whether you read that as exhausted honesty or strategic transparency, the underlying fact does not change. Kim Kardashian, the most legally savvy reality star in the history of the format, is building a business empire on top of a 6th grader. And Kanye West, the same man who put that 6th grader on a track with Sean Combs, is the one screaming about exploitation. Neither of these parents is walking into court with clean hands. Neither of these parents is going to come out of a custody trial looking like the hero of the story. And the children, all 4 of them, are the ones who are going to absorb the shockwaves of every decision that gets made. And just when you think the legal stack against Kim could not possibly get more complicated, you have to zoom out and look at the other fires burning around her at the same time. Because Kanye West is not the only opponent she is currently squared up against. The Securities and Exchange Commission, the actual federal financial regulator, charged Kim Kardashian with promoting a crypto asset security on social media without disclosing that she was being paid to do so. The asset was Ethereum Max. The payment was $250,000 for a single Instagram post. The fine was $1.26 million in penalties, disgorgement, and interest. She agreed to settle without admitting or denying the findings. She agreed to cooperate with the ongoing investigation. She agreed to refrain from promoting any crypto asset security for 3 full years. And on paper, that fine sounds enormous. But Kim Kardashian is reportedly worth $1.8 billion, according to Forbes. So a $1.26 million penalty, when you do the math against her actual net worth, is the equivalent of a fine of less than $100 for an average American family. Is it a punishment? Technically. Is it a deterrent? That is a much harder question to answer. And the SEC itself has had to reckon with what it actually means to fine someone whose annual interest on her own bank account dwarfs the penalty being handed down. That is the math of being a billionaire in America. That is the optics of regulatory enforcement at the very top of the income ladder. And that is a footnote that defense attorneys in custody court absolutely know how to use. Because once a parent has a federal regulatory settlement attached to her name, even a settled one, even an admitted without admitting one, that paperwork becomes ammunition in any courtroom that ever has to weigh her judgment against the other parent's judgment. Then there is the Ray J situation, which is its own 3-act soap opera tucked inside the larger soap opera. Kim Kardashian and her mother Kris Jenner notched a partial legal victory when a judge set a trial date for their defamation claims against Ray J, while simultaneously kicking his competing breach of contract lawsuit against them into private arbitration. The defamation claims stem from an October 2025 lawsuit in which Kim and Kris alleged that Ray J had maliciously defamed them by suggesting during a TMZ interview and on a subsequent live stream that they were, or should be, the subjects of a federal racketeering investigation. Judge Ellis denied a motion from Kim and her mother to keep the underlying settlement agreement confidential, characterizing their claims of harm as too vague, too speculative, too amorphous, and entirely unsupported by admissible evidence. Translation: the $6 million settlement details could become public. Translation: the curtain that Kim and Kris worked very hard to keep closed could be yanked open at any moment. Translation: another potential bombshell is sitting on a docket somewhere with their names attached to it, waiting for a clerk to file the paperwork that turns it into a headline. And every one of those potential headlines, every one of those potential disclosures, every one of those potential courtroom revelations is sitting in the same news ecosystem that any future custody trial would have to fight for oxygen inside of. There is no clean lane for Kim to walk into a courtroom right now. There is no quiet news cycle to time it against. Every door she opens has another door behind it, and every door behind it has another lawyer standing on the other side. And just to make sure no legal arena was left unattended, there is the New York man case. Kim Kardashian, in a post that has been described as either careless or catastrophically negligent, depending on who is telling the story, mistakenly shared a photograph on social media and identified the man in the photograph as a death row inmate. He was not a death row inmate. He was a private citizen whose face had been pulled into the most public defamation arena imaginable. He sued for defamation. He lost the case on the legal merits. And then Kim, in a move that has drawn its own wave of criticism, asked the court to order him to cover $145,000 in her legal fees. He responded with a motion of his own, pointing out that Kim was reportedly worth approximately $1.9 billion, that he was a private individual without the resources to absorb a six-figure legal bill, and that the court should consider the gross imbalance between the two sides before signing off on any fee transfer. The case is still being argued. The optics, regardless of who eventually wins, are not flattering. And every single one of these legal threads, the Kanye custody battle, the SEC settlement, the Ray J defamation case, the New York man fee dispute, and the trademark wars, are running through her calendar at the same time, on parallel tracks, with overlapping court dates and overlapping news cycles. And at the very center of all of it is the same 12-year-old girl whose voice was put on a Diddy track without her mother's permission. So bring it all the way back around to the question that started this entire avalanche, because every road in this story eventually circles back to it. What happens to Northwest? What happens to a 12-year-old who has a TikTok account with millions of followers, a trademark name across multiple product categories, a fashion brand in pre-launch, an Instagram account building grassroots hype, an album credit, a Coachella appearance, a Met Gala carpet walk, a father who wants her completely removed from public life, and a mother who wants to build a global lifestyle empire on top of her? Legal analysts have all said the same thing in slightly different words. This drama is one filing away from becoming a full custody trial. A fight for sole legal custody, if either parent actually pulls that trigger, would put both of their lives, both of their habits, both of their decisions, both of their phone records, both of their financial records, and both of their parenting choices under a microscope so powerful that nothing would survive it. With this much public attention already attached to the case, with this much money on the line, with this many parallel legal proceedings already running, a custody trial would not be a courtroom drama. It would be a cultural event. It would dominate news cycles for months. It would be dissected on every podcast, every panel show, every comment section on the internet. And there is no version of that trial in which any of the 4 children walk out of it unscathed. As of right now, neither parent has technically filed the formal lawsuit. The cease and desist Kanye sent is not a lawsuit. It is a warning. Kim's reported consideration of stripping his joint legal custody has not yet materialized into a court filing. But the trajectory is unmistakable. The trajectory is pointed in that direction with the velocity of a freight train, and there is nobody at the controls who seems particularly motivated to slow it down. Kanye has accused his ex-wife and the entire Kardashian family of reducing his role as a father to scheduled visitation. Kim has accused Kanye of violating mediation agreements and weaponizing his platform against the mother of his children. Both accusations carry weight. Both accusations carry receipts. And both accusations are going to land in front of a judge eventually, whether next month, next quarter, or next year. The only real variable left is which parent moves first, which lawyer files the petition, and which courtroom gets stuck managing the most expensive custody fight in modern celebrity history. And once that filing hits the docket, every leaked text, every screenshot, every podcast soundbite, every Instagram caption, every TikTok, every Coachella photograph, every Met Gala video, every trademark application, every corporate filing, and every text message threatening that you're going to have to kill me becomes evidence. Not gossip, not rumor, not internet speculation. Evidence. Sworn. Filed. Admitted into the record. And while we wait for the next filing to drop, here is what we already know to be true. Northwest, at 12 years old, is reportedly stepping into the fashion industry with her own clothing and jewelry brand. She has a TikTok account with millions of followers. She has rapped on songs. She has released an album. She has walked the Met Gala carpet. She has attended Coachella. She has her name trademarked by her mother across multiple product categories, ranging from cosmetics cases to handbags to footwear. She is, depending on which parent you ask, either a child being protected from exploitation or a child being shielded from the spotlight she has every right to occupy. Kanye wants to pull her out of public life entirely. Kim wants to scale her brand to a global audience. Both versions cannot coexist. Both versions cannot be the right answer. And the only entity in the entire ecosystem with the actual legal authority to choose between them is a Los Angeles family court judge who has not yet been handed the file. The legal pressure cooker is sealed shut now. The cease and desist. The trademark wars. The SEC settlement. The Ray J defamation case. The New York man fee dispute. The custody threats. The mediation collapse. The Diddy track release. The leaked texts. The 4 lawyers a day. The Bianca Censori footnote. Every single thread in this story, every one of them, ties back to the same central truth. When 2 of the most famous people on the planet decide to fight over their children in public, with the entire internet watching, with billion-dollar empires hanging in the balance, with federal indictments orbiting the supporting cast, and with trademark filings stacking up like ammunition, nobody walks out the winner. Somebody always loses. And history has been very clear, painfully clear, brutally clear, about who that somebody usually turns out to be. It is rarely the parents. It is rarely the lawyers. It is rarely the publicists. It is the kids. It is always the kids. It will always be the kids. And while the rest of the world refreshes the page waiting for the next bombshell to hit the timeline, for children inside that household are growing up under the loudest microscope in modern celebrity history, and not one of them got to vote on whether they wanted that microscope pointed at them in the first place. Not North. Not Saint. Not Chicago. Not Psalm. Not one of them was handed a contract to sign before the cameras started rolling on their lives. Not one of them was asked whether they wanted their faces on TikTok, their voices on tracks, their names on trademarks, their school schedules in the tabloids, or their family arguments leaked to the press. They inherited all of it. By blood. By circumstance. By the cosmic accident of being born to the wrong 2 famous people at the wrong moment in pop culture history. And the next chapter of their lives is now going to be written, in part, by attorneys they have never met, in courtrooms they will probably never see, on motions they will never read, in front of judges who will never know them.